Now, some of you would know, but many wouldn't, that Roy Morgan Research is one of the, we say longest established, but that means oldest. We're one of the oldest research companies really in the world. Our company goes back to the 1940s when Roy Morgan and George Gallup and about 5 others from different parts of the world would gather together to discuss how do we understand the human condition, how do we draw a sample, how do we do interviews. And once every 2 years, these 7 people, and they weren't all men, I think there were 6 men and 1 woman, would travel together to work out how research would be done. So we were part of that, and that's a really long time ago. In fact, that collaboration used to go on for years and years and years, and continued until really the advent of all sorts of telecommunication and globalisations, when we found that we were no longer sort of able to collaborate and share all of our ideas because we were in fact competing in our own countries. But you can see that Roy Morgan has been around for a really long time, counting and sorting and surveying people and providing reports on what they told us. And we've been in New Zealand for well over 20 years as well. Again, understanding all about people in New Zealand. So I thought before we got into the whole business of customer satisfaction and celebrating all your wonderful achievements, I would actually share with you some of the things that we've been finding about New Zealand, some of the things that are really interesting and I think exciting. So obviously you all know that there's a growing population over here. You know that just like many places in the world, it's an ageing population. But what you may not know is that New Zealanders are becoming increasingly open-minded and socially progressive. So, if we ask people in New Zealand, do you consider yourself to be open-minded and socially progressive? A large number do, but that's manifesting itself in interesting attitudes like a majority support for homosexual couples being allowed to adopt children. So if you don't believe that, you're in the minority. There's also an increasing acceptance and embracing of technology and the whole notion that computers and technology enable us to do things and take control over our lives. So those are just some of the things that we're seeing despite an ageing population. So you might think as a population gets older, it might become more conservative just by the weight of conservative older people. Not the case in this country. And obviously we're seeing, you don't need a slide for this, the rapid adoption of all sorts of technology, with now 78%, 79% owning a flat screen TV, and the line just charging up. Smartphones really charging the line going up there, and owning PCs and tablets. It's all about technology. So although not everyone in New Zealand believes that technology helps them take control over their lives, most are playing with it. And with that, of course, we see a declining, I said there's, increasingly open-minded and socially progressive here. And the corollary of that, of course, is that there's a decrease in conservative attitudes. But I think for all of us in the business of communicating with people, this chart actually shows something even more important, and that is that the majority of people, or large numbers, are still quite conservative. The line's trending down, but the majority, 56.6%, still believe the fundamental values of our society are under serious threat. That's a real conservative attitude. So as humans, we have these kind of weird, apparently conflicting views of the world. And I raise that because sometimes we tend to think everyone's into new things just for the sake of new. And we have to really understand that not everyone is like that. Some are quite fearful of change, and it's our task to understand who feels like what so that we can actually service them better in whatever they're doing. Now, the last one on the bottom, if you can read this chart, it says women should take care of running their homes and leave running the country to men. Now, that's kind of one of my favourite attitudes, and it's the one that gets us into most trouble, I have to say. When we do this survey, which we do all the time across Australia, we do it across Indonesia, we do it across New Zealand, every country that we operate in, and it's the one that we get, callback radio complaining about this. But it's very interesting. When I began at Roy Morgan Research, it was something like 18% of people believed women should stay at home and leave running the country to men. So it's decreased substantially. In Australia, it's kicked up a bit, so it's gone to sort of 7-8% now in Australia. And the really frightening thing, I think, is that in America, after the global financial crisis, this response, which was already high, in America 13% of people believe that women should stay at home and leave running the country to men, it's gone up to about 24%. So, wow, what does that mean? It means that you guys in New Zealand and we in Australia are pretty enlightened. That's what I think it means. There's also some changing views of what being a Kiwi is all about. So 89% of people who live in New Zealand say they consider themselves to be a Kiwi, and that's probably why we see such strong support for, traditional Kiwi brands and companies that are actually based here, and a strong preference for buying New Zealand-based products. And we're also seeing this continued rise of Maori culture being accepted and seen as an essential part of New Zealand. So these are some of the things that I think also drive the core values of New Zealand. And now a really fun one. New Zealand beer is under threat, says the Roy Morgan survey. Now, I know very little about Kiwi beer, but I'm told it's pretty good. It seems, though, that people in New Zealand don't agree with me. That the view that New Zealand beer is the only beer worth drinking used to be about 18%, and it's now down to about 10%. And also, the number of people who say that imported beer is a waste of money has decreased. So obviously, New Zealand is starting to look outside its shores and being less Kiwi-focused when it comes to beer.